Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
The Jewish people respond to death with 3 words of blessing. In English, the words mean, "Praised is the judge of truth." Let us begin our service with the wisdom of our tradition. Please repeat these words of blessing after me, everyone. Baruch, Dayan, Ha'emet. Praised is the judge of truth. Adonai Natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. Adonai has given and Adonai has taken. Praised be the name of Adonai. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Carol's life with the thousands of years of tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. We will do Psalm 23. If you are familiar with the English when we get to that, please feel free to join in. Excuse me. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yenahalein. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha, shivtecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, neged tzorerai, dishanta vashemen roshi, dishanta vashemen roshi, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed, yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti Vishavti bevet Adonai. Vishavti bevet Adonai. Leorech Yamim. Yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai, yadadai, yadai. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. My soul, he guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There are 3 ways to mourn. The first is to cry. The second is to grow silent. The third is to transform sorrow into song. I now invite Adam and Bronwyn to join me to say a few words.
I'm Adam Springer. Whoops, take this off. I'm Adam Springer, Carol's nephew. As a young kid, I always remember Carol was like the coolest person family that I knew. She was always crazy and wild and fun, and she used to call me her favorite nephew, which I thought was cool. I was her only nephew, but still I took the win. And that joke never got old. She would call me that even recently, always through the years. It was just our little thing. I grew up, she grew up, she settled down. She worked for 30-something years as a paralegal for Chuck Goldman, and I was always very proud of her that she had pulled herself together and sorted her life out, and she dedicated herself to her family, her children, and her grandchildren were super important to her. She was always a little far away from us, but she was always thinking of us, and we were thinking of her. My father, her brother Howard, they had a very close relationship. They were only 2 children of Charles and Regina, and they were close, and they would bust each other's chops and joke with each other, and she called him creep, and it was a fun thing, but there was a lot of love there. And sadly, he passed away 21 years ago, and whenever I talked to her, we would always remember something, and she would tell me some story that I had forgotten, and we always talked about creep, my father. After she had worked those years and she was finally able to retire in Florida, and she lived with Doc, I think that those were some of her happier times. He was a cool dude too, and they would watch NASCAR and watch the Buffalo Bills games, and they'd go to music festivals, and I'm glad she had that little window of retirement, that she had worked so hard for. And she didn't have an extravagant life, and she never really wanted it. She just wanted enough and to be happy and with people that loved her, and she had that for a while, with Doc. And unfortunately then, a lot of bad things happened for Carol and her loved ones, and Doc got sick, and she was sick, and Jody got sick, and it's just one thing after another. But, she kept her sense of humor through it all. It was, her one consistent characteristic was she just always had a sense of humor. And, she had a lot of friends, which I want to mention. They may be watching on the live stream, but her dearest friend, Marion, and Chuck that she worked for, Chuck Goldman, and Mazmin, who was a friend for a while. And I know they're thinking of her the same as I am. Sherry, she was always, whenever I spoke to her, she was so proud of you, even from back when you were in band camp and all the way up through life, and marriages and children and teaching and all your accomplishments, And then, once you had kids, that sort of transferred the conversations, and it was always about the grandkids. She'd call me, and sometimes I'd say, "Hey, creep," just to throw her off, but she would always start off with, this is what, Peyton and Paige and later on Jacob are doing, and, keep me updated, because I don't really do the social media thing. So, but we would always talk about that, and we'd talk about work. We'd commiserate about the law and how bad it was, and she'd complain about work, and I'd complain about work, and, we would always say, same old, and that was just our way. And, she lived her life her way. She was a little stubborn, and in a good way with good intentions, but she didn't take stuff from anybody. She did what she wanted, and I'm glad that she did, and I wish that I could live that way sometimes. But she had a great sense of humor. It carried through even all the difficult times: the death of her husband, death of her brother, death of her daughter Jody. But even the last time I spoke to her when she was there at the facility, she was still cracking jokes. She was joking about her own dementia, and that was just Carol, I'll always remember her with a little devilish smile, like she's about to do something she shouldn't. And she had just an infectious laugh. I couldn't do it, but she would giggle and laugh in a way that it just warmed your heart. And even with everything that she's gone through, she made the most of it in the time that she had. And then we can all learn something from her to don't take life for granted, and make the most of what you have and who you have with you for as long as you can. And that's what I will remember Carol for. My niece, Ariana, couldn't be here. She's down there in Florida. But she loved Carol a lot, and since she's moved down there to Florida, she has been in contact with her a lot the last few years, especially. And her mother, my sister Ellen, couldn't be here either, but Ariana asked me to read something that she had written, so I'm going to read that for her. Ariana says, "My Aunt Carol was many things. She was hilarious, the life of the party, and one of the nicest people I have ever met. She was what my generation would call the fun aunt." Mine too. She always made the room laugh, and everyone knew she would bring all the jokes she had. Aunt Carol was also dependable. She came to every birthday party and family event. I remember when I was little always getting excited to hear that Aunt Carol, Poppy, Jody, and Terry were coming to a birthday party or whatever the event was. They always made these family gatherings so much better. My favorite memories of Aunt Carol have to be when we were fishing. That's how I know a piece of my pop-pop, Howard, is always with me. My fondest memory of Aunt Carol is when she and Doc took me fishing behind their house. Doc showed me how to put the worm on the hook, and I was grossed out, and Carol laughed at me in the best way possible, and she pushed me, to throw the line. She was fearless, funny, and everything I could wish for in an aunt. I will miss her and all her jokes dearly, but knowing that she is finally with my grandpa, Jody, and Doc gives my mind ease, as I hope it does yours. Rest in the sweetest peace, Aunt Carol. I love you, Ariana. That's what I have to say.
Hello. My name is Bronwyn Springer, and I'm Carol's niece by way of marriage to her brother Howard's son, Adam. I will miss Carol tremendously. She was a remarkable person who, through seemingly inconsequential gestures, made a big difference in the lives of those around her, including me. These gestures, these lessons, are the gifts Carol has left and that I hope to carry forward in life. First, she would welcome people warmly into her family. She had a big heart and kept her mind and arms open to others, whatever their background. She found joy in people and in life. Second, she held closely to family and tradition. She had a powerful bond and supportive relationship with her brother Howard. They would joke and jab at one another, but I admired their devotion. Even years after his passing, she would call to check up on my husband, Adam, and I believe she was doing it because Howard would have wanted it that way. Finally, she kept an open ear and took time to listen to others, even when her own burdens were heavy. Before her memory started to fail, Carol would call and we would speak about so many things that were happening in the world. We would laugh and commiserate. But I will always be grateful to her for listening and offering kindness during a time when I needed it most. Thank you, Carol, for these gifts. Rest in peace. I will now share a memorial from Carol's daughter-in-law, Terry Abramson. Terry says, I was lucky enough to be introduced to Carol 30 years ago when my then girlfriend Jody introduced me to her mother. From that first day, Carol made me feel a part of her family. She accepted me immediately. She would call me her third daughter, and I called her my mother. A few years before Jody passed, when Jody did something funny, or even not so funny, Carol and I would look at each other and I would say, "Your daughter," and she would say, "Your wife." That was our inside joke, and we even incorporated it into Jody's and my wedding ceremony. A lot of people complain about their mother-in-law, but I didn't. I hit the mother-in-law jackpot with Carol. When Jody was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, Carol was right by, taking Jody to every chemotherapy and every other appointment Jody had, and she never complained. Although Carol could be stubborn at times, she loved wholeheartedly and treated everyone fairly and lovingly. Other than her daughters, Carol loved her grandchildren, Peyton, Paige, and Jacob, so much. These last couple of years, she was trying so hard to get up to New Jersey to see them. They had her heart. It is sad that they are now robbed of her love, but I want them to know how much she loved and thought about them. I now have to figure out how to live the rest of my life without my beautiful, wonderful mother-in-law. I have the comfort of knowing she is now with her husband, Doc, daughter Jody, brother Howard, and of course, her parents. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing your wonderful mother with me. You're a good daughter, and Carol loved you so. Thank you for listening to my thoughts. Carol, I love you. You are forever in my heart and will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, my beautiful angel.
Now invite Sherry.
I'd like to take a moment to thank my family and friends and everyone watching back home for coming today. I am touched by everyone's support. I'd like to thank my children for the past few days for being there for me. And Terry, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for taking care of my mom all those years. My mom made sure I always knew how much she cared. She reminded me every day how important I was to her. I knew she loved me because she took the time to tell me. I was always her Sheshi, was a family nickname. I was lucky to have been her daughter, and I want to express my gratitude to her for everything she did for me. My independent nature is a direct result of my upbringing. My mom raised me to figure things out on my own and not just give me the answers. Whenever I was struggling with something or I wanted to quit, Mom always used to say, "Life isn't fair," meaning I had to work through it and nothing was handed to me. As you can tell from my cousins, my mom and my sister were the crazy ones. My mom always made fun of me because I was the goody two-shoes. On senior skip day in high school, I actually asked permission to cut school, and I never lived that down. My mom constantly would remind me to lighten up and have some fun. Her favorite thing in life was being a grandma. She always asked about the kids. It got to a point where I was like, "Mom, do you remember me?" But she always wanted to know what the grandkids were doing. Mom, I hope you are reunited with Doc and with Jody. I know you miss them so, and I love and miss you, Sheshi.
We are here this afternoon to honor the memory of Carol Springer Abramson Granger, Chaya Fega Bat Chaim, who we lost this past Thursday, November 24th, 2022, the 30th of the Hebrew month of Cheshvan, 5783. She was 76 years old. She was born October 15th, 1946. Raised in Hillside, New Jersey by her parents, Charles and Regina, along with her dear, dear brother, Howard, who she lost, as you heard, 21 years ago, nearly. Now, she graduated from Hillside High School, and they did some checking. She didn't just wait until Florida to go to college. Apparently, she spent a little time at Union College in Jersey. And she studied dental assisting. Unusual. Of course, I get the impression that usual wasn't her thing. A blessing. But when the family moved to Hollywood, Florida, she attended Broward Community College and became a legal secretary. And she continued that for almost 35 years, up until about 3 years ago, right? So she had a career, a real career. Now, her Judaism was very important to her. Having been raised in a very traditional Jewish home, her family remembers the seemingly never-ending Passover Seders. I think there are more than a few of us who have experienced that. Carol was a stalwart supporter of progressive causes. So I'll be honest, I looked on her Facebook page. Not everybody has pictures of Rachel Maddow on their Facebook page, okay? My wife and I do, but I don't know about anybody else. No, I don't. But she clearly had a fighting progressive spirit. And she also had a very charitable sensibility. To celebrate her 73rd birthday, she sponsored a Facebook fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. Obviously, a cause very near and dear to her heart. Her charitable nature was evident as a mother as well. She instilled a care for other beings in her daughter Sherry. And when Sherry was a child, she felt it was her job to help every animal she could. She even helped a crab cross the street once. And she would often pick up stray and injured animals. And whether it was a duck or a turtle, and there were both of those, whatever, she definitely welcomed them. Carol would bring them home. Sherry would bring them home, and Carol would welcome them. She definitely had a soft spot for animals. She especially loved cats and had cats as pets. Sounds like all of her life. Yeah. In addition to her care for animals, Carol made sure her children were strong, independent people, as you've already heard. She loved seeing her grandchildren, who called her Grandma from Florida. Though the geographical distance made it challenging, it was very important to her. They were so important to her. She enjoyed sports and apparently adopted the teams from her adopted home of South Florida as her own. I was surprised to hear the story about the Buffalo Bills because, as I understood it, if you weren't rooting for the Miami Dolphins or the Miami Heat, you were in trouble with her. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So, most importantly, Carol loved her children and considered their partners, Kenny and Terry, as her own. She referred to them as her children. She always, let's just say the past several years have been difficult for her, as you heard, losing her husband, David Doc, 7 years ago, Jojo, to cancer 4 years ago, and after that, Terry took such good care of Carol. While not a cook, Carol enjoyed food and had some favorites. When Sherry would go to visit her at the facility, she always made sure to have a cheeseburger with her. And of course, she always enjoyed chocolate. Her sense of humor, her care for others, her wry smile, these are all things that will stay with you, with all of you forever. Carol is survived by her children, Sherry and Kenny and Terry. Her grandchildren, Grant, Peyton, Paige, and Jacob. Her nephew and nieces, Adam and Bronwyn, Ellen, Pam, and Scott. her niece and nephews. I'm going to get the tenses right. Penn, Spencer, and Henry. And of course, you heard of the very special relationship that she had with Ariana. Perhaps most importantly, though, she will be missed by her dear Charlie, the cat. I pray for all of you that you will hold her memory close and see and feel all the good in her and allow that to help lead you through the balance of your lives. May her memory be for a blessing. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. For those who are unaware, the family will be sitting Shiva tomorrow evening at Sherry and Kenny's home, 13 Progress Place in Voorhees, beginning at 6, I believe, 6 or 7, with a service at 7:30. We are going to continue with the El Malei Rachamim, our prayer for the deceased, and I ask that you all rise. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamitzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina v'ma'alot kedoshim utehorim kezohar harakia mazhirim et nishmat Chaya Fega Bat Chaim Shalecha Le'olama Began Eden Tehe Menuchata Ana Baal Harachamim Hastireha Beseter Kenafecha Le'olamim Utzror bitzror hachayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Chaya Fega Bat Chaim, Carol Granger, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. We remain standing for the mourner's Kaddish, which we recite together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ul almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. May the one who establishes peace in the heavens grant peace to us and to all people everywhere. Kol yeshvei tevel. And let us all say, amen. I'm going to do something slightly unorthodox, and that is ask the non-mourners to form two lines facing each other in the center aisle. So that would be everybody except for basically Sherry and Kenny. And we are going to recite the traditional words of mourning to the mourners as they pass between us. Please repeat after me, everyone but the mourners. Hamakom, Yenachem, Etchem, Betoch, Sha'ar, Avele, Tzion, V'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among all the mourners for Zion and Jerusalem. Amen. Thank you, everyone.